I find funny. I wrote a book called Miracles, which in the beginning of it I deal with the fine-tuned universe stuff, and I obviously stole everything there from John Lennox and some of your friends. But the point is that even I could see like what science is. Science is our ability to describe the universe. Mm-hmm. So using evidence, using the scientific method, using our five senses, we can learn and learn and learn and learn. But I realize that there are limits to science. So science can tell me, about the universe, but science can never tell me why the universe exists or whether there is a reason. Like, that's impossible for science. So some of what you're talking about strikes me as being, ironic that you have scientists in a way, not in a way, clearly going outside the precincts of science and making postulations based on a kind of faith in something. They don't want to believe there's a God, and they ought really to be properly agnostic on that.
That's true, but scientists are very poor philosophers as a rule, and they don't realize oftentimes that that's what they're doing. They've kind of imbibed their assumptions from other places. But a lot of people forget. I myself think science can conclude that some things have a purpose, like eyes. Eyes have a purpose. You might think that, say, you don't know what a purpose of a cow is, but the purpose of a cow's eye is obvious. The purpose of a cow's udder is obvious.
Utterly.
Utterly.
I apologize.
Yeah.
We're going to cut that out also. Well, I guess what I'm saying is, and I'm stealing this also from John Lennox, but the point is that there are limits to science, and I think what has happened is that if a scientist is uncomfortable with that, he begins to saying everything that's not science is stupid. It's like somebody who loves baked goods and has a bakery, and anything that is not a baked good, like, we can't talk about it, it's stupid. Like, rather than just saying, I like baked goods, and that's my field, they kind of act like anything outside of that field can't exist. And so you have scientists declaring off limits any reasonable speculation, which is to say any philosophy, as somehow not just not science, but anti-science.
Yeah, and you can see how unreflective many scientists are, because it's been known for 60 years by philosophers that philosophy, which they called logical positivism, that only things that can be measured and so on are real, is self-contradictory, because there's no scientific experiment that can be done to show that nothing outside science can be known. So, it's self-refuting. What's more, scientists don't think that, only scientific knowledge gives, or scientific experiments give knowledge. Well, how about mathematics? Should we throw out mathematics? Mathematics isn't science.
It's obviously anti-science.
It's helpful. How about logic? How about developing theories? When you first get a theory, what experiment told you that you should make up that theory? Nothing.
But isn't it true that, everything you're saying, it's common sense. Like, everyone knows this, except people who insist it's just wrong. Like, they just don't want to go there, or they subvert their own common sense, because it seems it's just so reasonable that it's almost funny.
And it is, and we're kind of riding on the knowledge that we had over the millennia, but the basic clash between that view and our lived lives is that view at bottom wants to get rid of minds. It wants to get rid of everybody's mind and say there's no such thing.
What you mean, because I know a lot of people are going to miss this, I just happen to know this because I'm smarter than them. When you say mind, what you're saying, I know what you're saying, I want everybody to understand it. You're saying they will say brains exist, but minds do not exist. In other words, everything that's consciousness is just a brain, which is just a computer. You're saying mind is something else. So explain that a little bit.
That's exactly right. That they will say brains exist because evolution built brains for us, and that everything at bottom is matter. So that when you think and you think you're thinking, you're not really thinking in the traditional sense of thinking, because it's natural laws that are determining what your thought processes are.
And ironically, the people who think that are actually not thinking.
There's ironies everywhere you look
Yeah.
in this topic. But a man named Francis Crick wrote a book 20 years or so ago called The Amazing Hypothesis, I believe the title was, and it was The Astounding Hypothesis. And essentially that it says, you are nothing but a pack of neurons.
How dare you? My wife is in the audience. Take that back. But I mean, so that's the point of view. That's really, it's a dramatic thing. It says that there is literally no such thing as good or evil.
Yeah.
That what is, there is no meaning. There's no good, there's no evil, there's no transcendence. The love that I have for my parents or my wife or my daughter, that's just evolution making me feel something to perpetuate the species. But there's nothing transcendent. Love doesn't exist. Mind doesn't exist. None of that is real. And they're insisting on this.
That's correct, and that's where scientific materialism leads. Not only love doesn't exist, you don't exist, and I don't exist. Nobody exists here. There are philosophers cheered on by scientists who say that there is no consciousness. Consciousness is an illusion. You say, wait a second. An illusion in what?
It's a pretty good illusion.
Yeah. Don't I have to have a consciousness to have an illusion of consciousness? And so it turns out that all of this stuff is related.
Yeah.
The ability to see purpose and design in life was thrown out by Darwin's theory. And it ultimately leads to denying humanity, denying anything exists beyond the physical level.
Okay, but what I find interesting is those scientists never really come out and say that, because that would be so unpopular, the mobs would come for them.
Oh, they do say that.
Well, but they don't say it publicly. They're not going to say it to a Time magazine reporter, to New York Times. They understand that it's, first of all, very ridiculous, but it's also, even if people buy it, it just feels wrong, like it feels mistaken. And they don't seem to be pushing that idea.
That's right. I think they're kind of screened by the media, who will see how it will be perceived as, really ridiculous.